the most effective drug-seizing teams in the entire country. I said I wish I told them earlier, take them and put them in every major city in the country.
4:22 a.m., Minneapolis, Minnesota. The city was buried beneath winter ice. Streets lay empty. Parked cars were frozen in place, sealed under a crust of frost. For the 42,000 residents of the Cedar Riverside community, the building at the end of the block symbolized leadership. It housed the district office of Senator Ahmed Nur. But outside, the silence was about to shatter. A long line of unmarked black federal vehicles rolled to a stop. 58 agents from the FBI and DA stepped out slowly into the bitter cold. There were no sirens, no flashing lights, only purpose. Agents formed a stack at the main entrance. Badges were covered. Weapons were ready. A breaching hammer slammed into the heavy oak door. What? Twice. On the third strike, the frame splintered. Federal agents, move. They surged inside, sweeping each room with practiced precision.
First, consider that 80,000 Somali Americans call Minnesota home. Soon, upwards of 100 ICE agents could be targeting them who living here, many understandably nervous.
Flashlights sliced through the darkness of the senator's office. Instead of harmless folders or constituent mail, agents uncovered the infrastructure of a cartel. Behind a false ventilation panel near the main desk, they pulled out 23 sealed bricks of high-grade cocaine, each stamped with a cartel insignia. This wasn't a user's stash. It was a distributor's inventory. A tightly locked steel safe, bolted to the floor, was drilled open. Inside sat $4.7 million in cash, stacked neatly and banded by size and serial number. More money than the entire neighborhood bank branch held in its vault. But the most alarming discovery rested in plain sight on Ahmed Nur's mahogany desk. A satellite phone, still active, blinking with a notification. The screen displayed encrypted instructions linking Minneapolis to financial hubs in Nairobi, Mogadishu, and Dubai. This was a full-scale money laundering pipeline operating from a U.S. senator's office. This was not an accident. It was a system deliberately built by the very man his community trusted most. If you believe politicians caught trafficking drugs should face the same justice as street dealers, hit the like button and comment, "No Somali" below. As the investigation deepened, the betrayal cut sharper. Senator Ahmed Nur, now 58, had long been seen as a bridge between cultures. At public events, he spoke of education and safety. In truth, he was using that office to construct a criminal network.
FBI agents raided a Bloomington business on Thursday after prosecutors say it billed Medicaid.
Over more than 6 years, that network evolved from political ambition into organized crime. Beneath a polite public image, nearly invisible to voters, an underground structure was growing. Through 27 shell companies, more than $79 million in cash and $220 million in transfers flowed through programs tied to his name. Investigators later recovered surveillance footage showing Ahmed Nur meeting repeatedly with Yahya Osman, a 34-year-old man directly linked to the Sinaloa cartel. Nur protected him for years. Their meetings were brief and discreet, quiet basement rooms, rented storage spaces. Nur never stayed longer than 20 minutes. He wasn't there to give speeches. He was there to authorize the movement of tons of narcotics into the country. The senator used 5 different cell phones, each with a separate number. Those phones connected him to officers.
Twin Cities leaders are preparing for a federal immigration crackdown as soon as this week. CBS News is reporting ICE will launch an operation targeting Somalis with deportation orders who live in Minnesota.
Officials and even judges became involved. Some accepted money. Others believed they were assisting national security. One by one they stopped asking questions. By the time the full threat emerged, Nur was already preparing. Among the discoveries was a shipment of 62 cargo loads labeled as supplies but filled with drugs. Agents were stunned. This wasn't street crime. This was coordinated activity executed with tools normally reserved for war. A man trusted to protect his community had used that trust to build a hidden empire. The investigation had grown too large to remain confined to paperwork. Maps covered the walls of the command center. Red markers identified high-risk sites. Every drawn line led to one location, a basement behind a nondescript community building on the outskirts of Minneapolis. From the outside it looked isolated. In reality, it was an active hub where money, weapons, and drugs moved every night. A plan was assembled immediately. It was called Operation Northern Sweep. For the first time in modern history, the FBI, U.S. military units, and more than 100 federal agencies prepared a coordinated assault, 29 locations simultaneously before dawn without warning.
Democratic leaders in Minnesota slamming the Trump administration over reports of planned immigration enforcement targeting Somalians in the Twin Cities. It comes after President Trump criticized the group during a cabinet meeting.
At 4:30 a.m., 19 minutes before the senator's office was breached, the operation began. Black helicopters flew low over frozen fields. Drones cast beams of light across the ground. Dozens of FBI armored vehicles thundered toward the gates of a manufacturing complex. When they struck the first barricade, the ground shook. Sparks erupted as metal twisted and tore. The gates were forced aside. Agents advanced in waves. Explosive charges blew open side doors. Flash grenades turned darkness into blinding white light. We are tracking court cases for every official involved in this scandal. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the updates. Inside, the complex felt like a maze: laboratories, storage rooms, reinforced bunkers. The air was thick with chemical fumes. Teams advanced room by room. Gunfire echoed through the darkness. Armed guards opened fire from behind stacked crates. The firefight was brief but intense. When it ended, several suspects lay face down on the concrete. Then came the real shock. Behind a steel door secured by 3 separate locks, agents discovered a full production line: stainless steel tanks.
Day after President Trump escalated tensions with America's Somali community.
They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country.
Conveyor belts. Racks of chemical containers. It was a fully operational drug manufacturing facility, protected by a security system resembling a military installation. Nearby, crates of ammunition sat stacked beside body armor. In another room, teams uncovered a command center: screens, maps, encrypted radios. On the wall hung a photograph: a police sergeant in uniform, smiling, standing shoulder to shoulder with gang leaders. The fortress had fallen, but the raid didn't end with broken doors. Once the last suspect was taken away, the work moved to the evidence room. Agents opened a large metal cabinet filled with files labeled with friendly names: community development, youth outreach. They sounded harmless. The numbers told a different story. Nearly every folder contained receipts for large sums of money, signed rapidly, approved without scrutiny. Transfers for $83,000. $120,000. Approved within minutes, sometimes in the middle of the night. Financial analysts compared bank statements with city approvals. Patterns slowly emerged. A councilman in one suburb had signed 6 permits in just 12 minutes. A police captain received a security consulting fee. On the same day, a suspicious truck passed through his district. A clinic was billed $1.9 million for services never provided. One elderly clerk, who had worked at City Hall for 27 years, began to cry as she reviewed the documents. "I gave them those permits because they said it was for the children," she whispered. This wasn't bribery whispered in dark alleys. This was bribery executed with forms, stamps, and official seals. In a second room, something else waited.
According to press reports, the operation could begin within days. The move comes as President Trump has disparaged Somalis with increasingly inflammatory rhetoric.
Long tables were covered with satellite-printed maps. Pinpoints marked warehouses, basements, and river docks. Lines connected every location. It looked less like a criminal hideout and more like a transportation network. Nearby were handwritten notebooks. One listed monthly payments to a police officer: $41,200 every month for nearly 2 years. Another listed small businesses, each name followed by a number. Some were low, $600. Others were much higher, $37,000. No services were ever rendered. The money simply moved. Emails were recovered as well. Approve the transfer. No delay. Warehouse ready. Do not inspect. As evidence piled up, a difficult realization spread. This network wasn't built by outsiders. It was built by insiders who allowed it to exist. Every document had been signed. Every shipment waved through. That afternoon, a special meeting was held. The lead prosecutor stood before a long table, her voice steady. "We are not looking at one criminal," she said. "We are looking at a structure that has existed for years inside public life." When the sun rose after the raid, Minneapolis looked unchanged from a distance. But up close, something was different. The flashing lights were gone, but yellow tape still clung to doors and fences.
And so in speaking with several people who currently live there and work there in that city, they've seen a lot of this, a lot of the confrontation, but they do say that it's isolated to certain parts of the city specifically.
Residents lingered on their porches longer than usual. Newspapers arrived early. The headlines were large: major raid in Minneapolis. 29 locations hit. 245 kilos of drugs seized. $52 million in cash recovered. For many older residents, the numbers were hard to grasp. They had trusted those buildings. They had donated money. They had volunteered. Now the names in print were familiar, and that made it hurt. A retired teacher whispered to herself, "I used to go to meetings in that building." She wasn't angry. She was wounded. Inside coffee shops, voices stayed low. "I never thought this could happen here. We voted for him. He looked like a good man." At a local diner, men in heavy coats sat around a long table. One tapped the newspaper and said, "If a judge and a senator can do this, who can we trust?" A week later, courthouse steps filled with people holding signs. "We deserve the truth. Who protected us?" It wasn't an angry crowd. It was a disappointed one. Banks grew quiet. A small northern branch closed for 3 days, its director arrested. Parents grew anxious, remembering vans parked near schools months earlier. "I feel foolish," one mother said. "I thought it was school supplies." Trust was the first casualty. But in the silence, something else emerged. Neighbors checked on one another. Doors once locked only at night were now locked during the day. It wasn't fear, it was awareness. They had learned that danger doesn't always come from outside. Sometimes it grows within institutions meant to protect. No one claimed the city was healed. Healing takes time. But conversations had begun again. The raids were over. The consequences were not. The community now faced a harder question. How do you rebuild trust once it's been broken? A reporter asked a federal agent, "Is the danger gone?" He smiled gently. "No, danger never disappears. But neither does courage." The war wasn't over, but the city was standing again. Stay vigilant.